Hello everyone, my name is Strafi and I'm happy to meet you all. And today I'm going to do an updated version of my deck list for Sunavalon, the deck list that got me to DL Max 20 in the WCS and currently got me to Legend 4 in the ranked ladder. I'm not quite King of Games yet, but we're working on it. So the deck is very similar to my last video. It's just that we've cut basically all the unnecessary cards to play as many hand traps as possible, which makes the deck much harder for our opponents to out and gives us a lot more flexibility. The skill, as always, is Sprouting of the Sacred Seed. It allows us to swap one of our Sunvine monsters in our any monster in our hand for a Sunvine effect monster or a Sunseed effect monster. So this allows us to trade Effect Veiler, Artifact Lancia, DD Crow, or Rose Archer for the Sunseed Shadow or the Sunvine Maiden, depending on what we need. That's really good. The other effect of the skill is that if you reveal a plant in your hand or your graveyard, you can return it to the deck to set Sunseed Genus Loci from the deck. That's really strong. The primary way that we use this is if our opponent messes with our Dryas by destroying it or by negating its summon, we can just return Dryas to the extra deck, set the Sunseed Genus Loci, and start our combo all over again. But we can also use the effect after we've, say, played 1-for-1 and discarded a card to special summon Loci or special summon, Shadow. Then we can return whatever monster we discarded to get our monster back. The main drawback of this version of the deck versus the version of the deck that I was playing before is that because we are playing so few plant monsters, we actually sometimes can't activate the third effect of the skill. Because we are currently only playing 6 plant monsters in the deck. 1 Twin, 1 Shadow, 1 Maiden, and 3 copies of Loci. You can't use, while you can use any of these monsters to draw those cards, you cannot use these monsters to set the Loci. So it's interesting. The first effect of the skill very heavily encourages you to run as few plants as possible, whereas the second effect of the skill punishes you for doing so. So what has ended up happening is I have a very, very powerful version of the deck that's also extremely bricky. If I do not have 3 copies of, if I do not have one of my 3 copies of Loci, one of my 1-for-1s, or one of my Unexpected Dies, it's difficult for me to make any plays. Now that said, I could play Lone Fire Blossom as well. Maybe that is the solution. Maybe you should play maybe 2 copies of Lone Fire Blossom as well. I haven't suffered so much yet that I want to make that change. The hand traps are very helpful. So we are playing Artifact Lancia at 1. You might want to play this at 3. I only have 1. This basically beats agents, it hurts rockets a lot, and it destroys Phantom Knights. Effect Veiler is very good against every deck except Blue Eyes, really. Crow is really good against Blue Eyes and against Phantom Knights and against Shiranui. And Rose Archer is good against basically everything except rockets. Rose Archer is a card you guys might not be familiar with. It's a warrior monster. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a trap card while you control a plant, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. That's really funny. A hand trap that negates traps, which is insane. So yes, a lot of people play into this. They will use a card like Compulsory Evacuation Device or Ice Dragon's Prison, and you just stop it. This is like the only card that outs Ice Dragon's Prison in the entire game. Okay. Twin... if this card is normal special summon while you control a Sunavalon Link monster, you target one of your plants and special summon it. So you will summon this off of your Sunvine Sowing to get your Loci back. Shadow can special summon itself from the hand while you control Loci, and then you can banish it from your graveyard to get a copy of one of your Link 2s. And Maiden can special summon itself from the hand when one of your plant extra deck monsters is targeted to negate the activation. Die gets you Loci, 1-for-1 gets you Loci, Sowing gets you Twin, and Bloom is a board negate that also buffs all your monsters. For the extra deck, we are playing 2 copies of Dryades, which is the main change. That allows us to use the Sunseed Shadow to go into 2 Link 4s. I've made a video about this. You guys have all seen it at this point, so I'm not really worried about that. 2 copies of Milius, 1 copy of Dry and Trentier, 1 copy of Resurgent, 1 copy of Dryas, and 1 copy of Thrasher. And of course, the skill gives us Thrasher, Healer, and Garden as well. Okay. Alright, so I want to showcase how the deck functions and how you can play around a lot of different types of decks by looking at one particular replay. This happened when I was at Legend 4. Alright, so we were up against Eternal Bond. And our hand is pretty insane. We got Rose Archer, we got Twin, and we got Maiden. Now we're going to use the skill to get Twin back in the deck because we need it in the deck, and we're going to draw our Sunseed Shadow instead. Activate Unexpected Die, special summon the Loci. Link into the Dryas. Dryas effect, grab the Sowing. Activate Sowing, special summon the Twin. Twin gets back the Loci, and since we took damage, Dryas triggers. Special summon the Healer from the extra deck, we gain 300. Then we link off into Melius. Melius revives the Loci. Then we special summon Shadow from our hand, and we will link Shadow and Dryas off into Dryads. Then we can banish Shadow from the graveyard to target the Dryads and summon another copy of Dryads. We use our 2 link monsters to go into Bengalancer the Resurgent, and then we'll link the Sunseed Genius Loci with the Sunavalon Dryas to make the Melius. Melius revives Loci for a 3rd time. We link into Giant Trentier. Giant Trentier draw our Bloom, which will set. Then we activate Bengalancer the Resurgence effect. So while it's in the graveyard, if you choose not to use its bounce effect for the whole turn, you can banish monsters whose total link levels equal 4 to revive it, but then banish it when it leaves the field. So we are going to banish our 2 Dryads to summon the Bengalancer the Resurgent back. Then we're also going to summon Thrasher with the last copy of Loci that we had, target the Giant Trentier, and gain 3,200 attack points. Alright, so our board now is 4,000 attack points, 2,500 attack points, a board negates, counter a trap, and protect ourselves from being targeted. Basically, the only thing that we lose to at this point is exactly Super Polymerization. We don't have to worry about Neos Kluger, we don't have to worry about Yubel, and we don't have to worry about anything else. It's our opponent's turn, and they normal summon Neos and they draw Super Poly. That's unfortunate. So if they play this card and they get rid of the Giant Trentier, that destroys the Thrasher as well. They can then hit the Bengalancer the Resurgent, take half its attack points, and we have to use Bengalancer the Resurgent to get rid of the Gaia, and then potentially they have maybe a card like Miracle Contact or Neos Fusion, and we just lose the game. So we're in really bad position here. And our opponent chooses to send the Thrasher instead, which is the worst possible choice. If they wanted to get rid of the Bengalancer, that would make sense. That is one of our main outs to Neos Kluger. So getting rid of Bengalancer when you know that it's going to be banished, possibly the right choice. Sometimes not, sometimes yes. Getting rid of the Giant Trentier takes care of everything else. But getting rid of just the Thrasher when you could have gotten rid of the Giant Trentier and the Thrasher makes no sense at all. So our opponent made a huge misplay here. They summon Gaia. Gaia's effect targets the Bengalancer the Resurgent to take half its attack points, and then they try and enter the battle phase. So since I see that they are leaving the main phase, I will go ahead and use the effect. I bounce the Gaia. I take 1725. Now, I chose not to use Bengalancer the Resurgence effect in response to Gaia's effect activating. Because I did that, I took way more damage. I took 1725 instead of just 1100. That's going to be relevant later. So, I draw Effect Veiler. That's a pretty good card. I'm going to activate Bloom so that I can get lethal, and then I attack, and my opponent's last card in hand is Kiteroid. So they're going to take no damage from the first Kiteroid proc. Then we attack with Giant Trentier, and the way that Bloom works with a monster that has 0 attack points is that I don't think Kiteroid gives you the opportunity to even trigger. You just take the 2,500. So if I still had the Thrasher, or if I had a way to make Thrasher, I would have gotten lethal here just because they wouldn't have been able to activate Kiteroid, but I broke. And my opponent doesn't have a monster, so I can't use the skill. So we pass. So our opponent's turn, they normal summon another copy of Neos, and they're going to use the skill to grab Miracle Contact. Then they activate Miracle Contact, and they are going to shuffle the Kiteroid and the Neos back into the deck to summon Brave Neos. At this point, I laugh out loud. I'm just like, what? That's your play? Getting rid of your Kiteroid to summon a monster that just has 100 more attack points than my Bengalancer? Get it out of here. And then I just chain rip the Bengalancer the Resurgent effect to bounce the Brave Neos. Well, that's exactly what my opponent wanted me to do. Now I've taken 1,300 damage, and my opponent activates Neos Fusion as the last card in their hand to bring out the Kluger. My Bloom has already been activated because I tried to get lethal off of it, so I cannot use that card to negate my opponent's monster effects. Thankfully, I had Effect Veiler, so Effect Veiler stops the Neos Kluger from burning me for 1250 before the attack, but he does crash into my Bengalancer the Resurgent. Now, Bengalancer the Resurgent would banish itself if I let it die here, so I'm going to go ahead and banish my Sunvine Sowing to protect it. I still take 500 damage. I'm down to 775. Now I'm in a lot of trouble. I could beat over Neos Kluger, no problem. But even if I have enough attack points to end his life points, Neos Kluger's effect will trigger before I can attack him. So if I summon a monster with 6,000 attack points and I attack, I will take 3,000 damage. Can't get around that. I don't have a way to negate cards. My Sunavalon Bloom has already been activated. I can't use Effect Failure during my turn. I have ways to stop traps, and I have ways to stop being targeted, but I do not have ways to stop burn. The only cards left in my extra deck are Sunvine Gardna, which halves the damage I take from battle, and Thrasher, which could get enough attack points to beat over the Kluger, but at the cost of all my life points. I have nothing left to do, chat. So, I want you guys to think about this. How do I win this game? Think about it. Consider everything that's happened. Consider the skills. Consider the traps. Consider what card I could draw. Now let's watch. I draw 1 for 1, which helps me not at all. I'm going to activate the skill, and I'm going to target Sunvine Healer. I'm going to take Sunvine Healer from my graveyard and return it to my extra deck to set a copy of Sunseed Genius Loci. Now I flip Sunseed Genius Loci, my opponent is going to activate Warning Point, and I will activate Rose Archer in response. I negate the trap and destroy it. Now I can link my Sunseed Genius Loci off into Sunvine Healer, and since I have a Link 4 monster, I gain 1,200 life points. That brings me up to 1975. Now I have enough life points to activate Bangalance to the Resurgence effect. I return Neos Kluger to the extra deck. That gets around both Neos Kluger's float effect and Neos Fusion's protection. I take half of its attack points and damage, go down to 475, attack directly. My opponent has already shuffled Kiteroid back into the deck, and they lose. There you go, chat. So that is how you can effectively use the skill and effectively use all of your cards. Never forget that Sunvine Healer and Sunvine Gardna do have effects that are beneficial to you, even if they're difficult monsters to summon. Thrasher is not your only beat stick here. My name is Srafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.